So just one part was left with regard to these rights and duties. So we'll do that. It was like rights of principles. Again, this also is somewhat similar to the duties of an agent, right? Like rights and duties would be just opposite, right? Whatever are the rights of principal, those would be again obligations of agent and vice versa. So these are something that we have already discussed while studying about agents. Okay, so this is rights of principal. We have 7 different rights, and these are the articles that we have. So first one is right to repudiate contract, section 250. Now, if under an agency relationship, we know that agent is supposed to work based on the directions given by the principal. So if an agent deals on his own account in the business of agency rather than working for the account of principal, in such a case, without first obtaining consent, he did not take permission or approval from the principal, but he worked for his own personal account. So in such cases, what happens is the principal will have a right. So these are rights of principal. Principal would have a right even to repudiate the contract. So principal may repudiate such a transaction if the case shows either that the material facts has been dishonestly concealed from him by the agent, or that dealings of the agent have been disadvantageous for to him, to the principal. So in such cases, principal would be having a right even to repudiate the contract. So there was this example which we saw with regard to duties of agent. That same example applies here as well, that A directs B to sell A's estate, and B, on looking over the estate before selling it, finds that there is some hidden mine inside it, which is like undiscovered, and it is not known to the principal as well. So he made a promise to another person, a prospective buyer, that he will convince the principal that principal sells the property or estate to this buyer for a reasonable price, and some additional amount he would be paying to the agent. So if C will pay some amount to the agent, so when principal comes to know about it, he can repudiate the same. He can say that some material facts were concealed by the agent and he was not acting for benefit of the agency relationship, but rather what he was doing is he was trying to work for his own personal gain or for his own personal benefit. So that will be the example. So this we have already studied, right? Same thing applies with regard to rights of principal as well. The principal has this right that he can repudiate the contract if some material fact was concealed from him, or if agent is working on his own account. So in both the two cases, he can do that. This is section 250. Next one is section 216, to claim benefit. So right of principal to claim benefits. If the agent, without knowledge of the principal, deals with business of agency on his own account instead of account of his principal, the principal is entitled to claim from agent any benefit which may have resulted to him from the transaction. Agent cannot make any secret profits or receive bribes in terms of the agency relationship, but he should always be acting for the benefit of the agency only. The position of an agent being fiduciary in character, he cannot conflict his personal interest with the duty to the principal. So he should not bring his own personal interest in the agency relationship, but rather he should be focusing on working for the benefit of agency that is there between the two persons. So there is again this example that A directed B his agent. So principal gives the direction to the agent to buy a certain house for him, and agent comes and tells to the principal that this house is not available. You cannot basically buy it. Might be the owner is not looking to sell it or something. And later on, he buys the house for himself. A may, on discovering that B has bought the house, compel him to sell it to A at the price he gave for it. So agent should not bring his own personal interest in the agency relationship, but rather he should be acting for benefit of the agency. In case agent tries to take some benefit or advantage by concealing some facts, when principal comes to know about it, he will have a right to claim benefit. Whatever benefit agent has got, might be the price of the house was very less, so that would be like a benefit that agent has got. So principal will have a right to claim such benefit, that for whatever price you have bought the house, now you need to sell it to me, because you cannot bring your own personal interest in between. So this also was there with regard to obligation of agent towards a principal, right? So just section 260 to claim benefit, whatever agent has earned, principal will have a right. So he cannot basically make any secret profits, or he cannot receive bribes, and he should not bring his own personal interest in the agency relation. He should rather be focusing on benefit of the agency only. To ratify or disown agents X. So principal will also be having a right to ratify or disown agents X. So both the ways he will have a right, he will have the right to decide. In case of contract, right, there are like some essentials that we need to satisfy, and one of those is the eligibility of parties, like they should be major person and all that stuff also. So there is one more thing which says there must be free consent between parties. That means when you give your free consent with regard to something, only then it becomes binding. Okay, so there is a provision with regard to free consent, and it says consent make the law. Consent make the law. Under contract, what happens is something that we agree, that becomes like a law. It becomes binding on us just like a law. How does it become a law? It is because of our free consent only. So when we freely give our consent, that consent will make the promise like a law. Okay, so we need to give our free consent. That is also one of the things that we have under contract. Okay, so there are certain reasons, like might be someone forced you to give your consent, someone tried to unlawfully influence your decision. There are certain 5-6 grounds which will make the consent was not free. Okay, so basically when consent is not free, if someone's consent was not free, like if there are two persons, A and B, B's consent was not free and A obtained his consent, in such a case, right, B should be given the option that you decide whether you want to still proceed with the contract or not. Even though your consent was not free initially, you now tell us whether you still want to proceed with it or you do not want to proceed. Right? So same thing applies here also. That principal was not aware with regard to certain acts of agent, right? So principal would be given that option. You either accept whatever he has done or you reject it, right? Like basically you ratify it or you disown it. These three differences, are you aware? Void, voidable, and valid. Three types of contracts.
Yes, madam.
What is voidable?
Voidable, I don't know. Void means invalid contract, so valid contract. Voidable, if any conditions are not fulfilled, something like that, it becomes voidable.
Voidable as in there would be like two parties, right? At least two parties. So only one of the parties would have the option of deciding whether they want to proceed with it or not. Like the case I told you with regard to free consent. If someone's consent was not free, that person would have the authority to decide whether he still wants to proceed with it or not. Take for example, A obtained B's consent that B will be selling his plot of land only for 20 lakhs rupees to A. The actual price was very high, but he still made an agreement that yes, I want to sell my plot of land to A for 20 lakhs rupees. But how was the consent obtained? It was through undue influence, right? Or by putting him under some sort of fear or threat or something. That means B's consent was not free. He was put under some kind of fear, and thereby he was made to sign on that piece of paper that he wants to sell his property for 20 lakhs to A. But now, after a certain point, right, B has the, like, B can say that no, this agreement is not valid because I did not give my free consent. I never wanted to sell my property for 20 lakhs. Or if he feels that might be it's not that bad also, no one would be willing to buy my property at this point of time, and I'm willing to sell my property, so 20 lakhs is not that bad also. I'm still, like, I want to proceed with it. Even though initially my consent was not free, I gave my consent because I was put under some kind of fear or threat. Now I don't mind proceeding with it. That means out of A and B, only B will have the option of deciding whether he wants to proceed with it or he do not want to proceed with it. That becomes a voidable contract. So mostly with regard to this, right, whenever consent is not free, mostly those contracts are voidable. There is just one exception. Otherwise, mostly those contracts are voidable. Whoever's consent was not free, that person would be given the option of deciding whether you still want to proceed with it or you want to reject it. Okay. So the same thing would apply here also. To ratify or disown Agents Act. If agent has done something, you were not aware of it, you did not give him the authority to do it, some material facts were concealed from you, you should not be made liable for it. Right? So what happens is, at that stage, in such a situation, principal would be given the option. Do you still want to accept whatever agent has done? Do you want to ratify it, acknowledge it, or you want to disown it? Or do you want to go with the argument that you were not aware of certain material facts or you did not give permission for such an act? So what is the option that you want to select, right? That option would be given to principal. So principal can decide whether he wants to ratify such an act or whether he wants to disown such a fact. So principal will be having the authority to decide whether he wants to ratify the act of the agent and be responsible for whatever he has done, or he wants to disown the acts and wants to keep him separate from all the obligations or responsibilities. Next one is the fourth right that we have, that is right to revoke agent's authority. This is given under section 203. What is right to revoke agent's authority? The principal may revoke the authority given to his agent by giving a reasonable notice of revocation at any time before the authority has been exercised, and to bind the principal. That means if principal had given some authority to the agent before, right, at any moment before the agent exercises that authority, principal can revoke it. Principal can take back the authority that he had given so that he can keep him separate from any sort of responsibilities, right? So if he revokes the authority that he has given, he cannot be made liable for whatever the agent has done. It might happen that an agent has been given some like 5-6 different types of powers or authority. If principal feels that this specific power or authority should not be given to this agent, he can revoke that one specific power also, and it would be considered that the agent is not having authority to do anything with regard to that specific power where authority has been revoked by the principal. So this right is given under section 203 of Indian Contract Act. Next one is to claim loss or profit. There are two sections which we have, section 211 and section 212. It is to claim loss or profit. The principal is entitled to compensate for any loss that is sustained by him or to any profit that is being received by him, that is accrued. So principal is entitled to compensate in case any loss is sustained by him or in case any profit is gained, where the agent acts contrary to the directions given by the principal. So while discussing duties or obligations of agent, we saw that agent should ideally be following whatever directions principal has given or whatever is the usual things, right? Usually how people carry forward such a business or such a thing in case there is absence of any specific directions. But if agent fails, right, or he acts contrary to the directions given by principal, then principal will have a right to claim compensation for any loss that he has sustained. Where loss is caused due to agent's neglect, want of skill or misconduct. If agent was guilty in any way and as a result of that negligence or any other want of skill, misconduct or any other wrong behavior of agent, if principal sustains some loss, he can claim compensation also with regard to it. And if agent makes use of the agency relationship and tries to earn some profit, principal can also claim profits also. From the agent, principal can also claim profits that he has earned based on the agency relationship. So these two rights are given under section 211 and section 212. Next one is to demand accounts, section 213. This we also discussed while studying obligations of an agent, right? That obligation should be keeping records of all the accounts. If at any point of time principal wants to see those accounts, then agent should be disclosing it. So this applies with regard to this also, that principal is having a right to demand accounts. Principal is entitled to demand accounts from the agent and agent should accordingly be providing that or disclosing that to the principal. So there was this case also where agent tried to file a case saying that this principals should be made like accountable, like principals should be compelled to see the accounts. But what did Madras High Court held is that under section 213, principal can ask for accounts if he wants. Like if principal is demanding for it, agent should be supplying it, but it should not go opposite way. Agent cannot file a case before court asking that agent, the principal should be compelled that he looks after the accounts or he asks for accounts or something like that, but that depends on principal. If principal wants, he can demand. If not, that's also fine, but agent should be maintaining a record. So this also is a right that principal can utilize based on his discretion. And the last one is section 220, to refuse remuneration when agent is guilty of misconduct. If principal has a right to refuse remuneration to an agent who is guilty of misconduct in the business of agency, if agent was guilty in doing something, principal can refuse the remuneration as well. If he tried to play fraud or any other misconduct, principal can say that because of this specific behavior, he may refuse remuneration as well. So these are the rights that a principal would be having. These are the 7 different types of rights which we have as well as the sections.